This week in Lighthouse, I'll be talking with Pastor Gaylord, our English and caring pastor, about the challenges he has been facing recently, the challenges he needed to make in faith, and how God is using these challenges to further honor God, bless others, and help him live in accordance with the skills and gifts God has given him. Coming right up. What's up? What's up? I'm Dominic, and Lighthouse is the youth ministry at Austin Chinese Church, where we desire for every student to personally experience the light of Christ and for students to shine the light of Christ into your spheres of influence. Today's lesson is different from our usual lessons. Today, we want to share stories about the recent challenges, changes, and areas of growth Pastor Gaylord has experienced over the past few years that have culminated in a big change in his life. What's going on, Lighthouse? I've got Pastor Gaylord here with me. He's joining me live on this Zoom, and we wanted to bring something a little bit different for you tonight, where instead of a lesson, we actually have some news to share with you about some things that are going on in Pastor Gaylord's life. And so he wanted to share those with you. So he's joining me tonight, and he's joining you to really share what God has been doing in his life. So Pastor Gaylord, welcome, and thank you for joining us in Lighthouse tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Of course. So there may be some of you who may not be as familiar with Pastor Gaylord. So why don't you just go ahead and give us a brief introduction about yourself for maybe those of us that haven't met you or know you very well before. And why don't you just tell us a little bit more about you, your family, and your ministry?
Okay. Well, I'm 20 years old. No, just kidding. Actually I was born in the States. I was born in Syracuse, New York, in February during a blizzard. So that was pretty exciting start to my life. But I have two younger brothers, and all of us are, married in the U.S. and stuff like that. So my parents both came. They were born in Shanghai, but grew up in Taiwan, and they came to the United States for graduate school. So that's a little bit about my family, my parents. My wife Tina and I moved here, and our daughter was only 4 months old, almost 5 months old when we moved here. So that was about 22 and a half years ago.
Wow.
And came here to be the English pastor. Came here to be the English pastor at Austin Chinese Church, and we're very thankful that God brought us here. We moved here from Minneapolis, Minnesota, so quite a temperature change.
Yeah.
But it's been a privilege to serve here. So Silas is my son. He's 17, and my daughter, Karis, we're getting ready to move her out to California. She graduated from college, and she's looking for work out there for music production. So
nice. Well, thanks again for joining us. And before we get really going here, I just wanted to know something about you. So why don't you tell us what your first job was as a teenager? I'm really curious. Everyone's got their own story, so I want to know what's yours.
Okay, so when I was in high school, so I took piano for many years, and I don't even know how
We've seen you play a couple times.
Well, sorry. Yeah. When there's nobody else to play, then say, okay, I'll play, but oh well. So my first job was to be the accompanist for a voice teacher's in her voice teacher's studio. So basically her students had like 30-minute lessons.
Right.
And I would sit in the back while she vocalized the student to warm them up. And then the teacher would call me in, and they'd put up the music, and then I'd have to play and sight read whatever was up there. So that was interesting, but it was a good job. I got to use some of the piano training. So that was my first job. That was in high school.
Nice,
and then
nice.
After I graduated, right before I started college that summer, I got to work construction. So I helped to put up sheetrock in the school that I just graduated from. They were building a new section. So that was a tough job. That was really a tough job. and it was in Louisiana, so it's super hot. But
Yeah, I would assume that sounds like the summertime then, right?
yeah, that
Yeah.
was pretty
Oh,
rough.
ooh, a lot of
Those of
humidity.
you that know me, sweating is one of my spiritual gifts. So
All right. So I understand that you've been going through a recent change in your life. Why don't you tell us more about that change and how did that change actually come about in your life?
okay, so so being an English pastor obviously is a privilege, and there were some things that along the way I needed to learn. But I had a sabbatical, and a sabbatical
Mm-hmm.
basically is at our church every 6 years. The full-time pastors are allowed to take 3 months, um, 3 months off, and during that time, it's supposed to be
Right.
for rest and for
Mm-hmm.
restoration, um, and for learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of that rest and restoration is spending time with your family, but also that's the time to just get away. And
Uh-huh.
so during that time, we usually don't go to our church, and we usually don't. I mean, we go to I visit other churches during that time,
Sure.
which is really neat to see what God's doing in the city, and different kinds of churches,
Mm-hmm.
different ethnicities, etc. So um, during that time, this last one was 2017,
Okay.
and I wanted to do some leadership coaching because
Mm-hmm.
I think leadership is sort of a tough thing. Leadership is not just telling people what to do.
Right.
Leadership is actually, there's a lot of inside qualities that need to be developed, and
Mm-hmm.
especially to be a godly leader. So during that time, I got some leadership coaching that was very insightful. I
Right.
got to pray and think a little bit more and try to be honest in evaluating myself, and
Mm-hmm.
also evaluating how ministry had been going. And by
Okay.
God's grace,
Right.
ACC had been growing in the English congregation. But I also realized I was getting a little bit more stressed. And
Mm-hmm.
in general, I'm usually not that stressed out of a person.
Okay.
I didn't think I was. But as I paused during that sabbatical, I realized that there are parts of the job of the ministry that were stressful for me. And then the more I analyzed, I realized it's because I was not very competent at it.
Mm-hmm.
But yet it was part of my
Wow.
job description. So that was a little bit daunting to think that I'm not very good at what I do, or
Right.
had gotten to that point.
That must have put you feeling like you were in a really precarious situation, right?
Right, because you either get, if it's really bad, you get fired. If I
Yeah,
feel
that
like it's really, if I feel like it's really bad, then I can resign.
mm-hmm.
But there was a third option, which is after much discussion and prayer, and talking to my wife, talking
Mm-hmm.
to leaders, our elders in our church and
Right.
stuff, I basically asked, would the elders mind if I wrote a different job description for myself? Um,
Wow.
I still am part. Yeah, it's sort of
Yeah.
weird
I mean
to ask that.
yeah, I mean that's a I mean you were talking about, how you've been here at ACC for 22 and a half years and to say I'm learning things about myself and I want to write a new job description. I mean how did you feel when you had to when you actually proposed that to them? Like what were you feeling when you when that happened?
Well, I had peace that I should ask. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how they would respond.
Right, right, of
And just a
course.
side note, I'm very, very thankful for the elders we have in our church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they they've known me over the years, and they were willing to give me some time to process things. And so I came up with a proposal, which basically said, "Hey, uh, number one is, can I step down from being the English pastor who's in charge of English, the lead English pastor
Mm-hmm.
position? Many of you guys know Pastor Art, so he was the associate English pastor, English associate pastor, and I was the English pastor who's the lead pastor. And basically, I
Right.
said I'd like to step down from being the lead pastor because things like casting vision,
Mm-hmm.
strategy, coming
Mm-hmm.
up with strategy. I didn't do that very well. I just am
Mm-hmm.
not wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was other things that I am good at. I think God's
Right.
given me gifts to do, and I wasn't doing them because I was spending so much time doing things that I wasn't very competent in. And I also asked if they would consider, and Pastor Art and I had talked, I said, would you consider asking, putting Art to be the lead English pastor?
Mm-hmm.
But I basically said, I'll still be involved with English ministry, at least initially, but part of my job, will, like 70% of it will be focused on English ministry still under Pastor Art's leadership. But then
Mm-hmm.
the other part would be 30% of my job would be caring. And the
Right.
idea of
Huh.
shepherding, caring
Okay.
for people is something that
Right.
I am wired up to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the elders were very gracious. It also includes caring for our missionaries,
Okay.
caring for our staff.
Mm-hmm.
We have 13 on staff now, and just making sure they're okay, checking how their families are doing, how their
Right.
marriage is doing for
Mm-hmm.
those who are married. Those are things that I'm wired up to do. And anyway, the elders were very gracious and gave me the green light. But it was a long process. It took this last part of writing a job description, and everything. It took about a year.
Wow.
So,
Wow. I mean, so what went into the process for you in terms of writing the job description to find something that really uh, fit with where you feel like God had really gifted you and equipped you and really made you skilled at, but at the same time, kind of understanding the balance that needed to exist in this new tension.
well, I had to be honest. I had to honestly evaluate, and I also had to be honest with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had to ask for advice from
Mm.
people, and I actually didn't. I've never done this before, where you don't usually rewrite your own job description.
Yeah.
But I had to see. I had to be honest to say, what do I do well, um, and what are things that I don't do well,
Mm-hmm.
but not because of lack of effort. I mean, it's
Right.
one thing to be lazy. It's another thing where you work at something and you can just tell this is not going to go well. It's not going to be good for me. It's not going to be good for others. I'm not being a good employee,
Right. I mean, that
minister.
just must have been a really hard realization to come to terms with, right?
It was humbling. It was humbling on one side to
Mm-hmm.
come to the conclusion that, maybe my job, I'm not fitting my job description.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on the other side, there was a peace and a freedom
Hmm.
because I was starting to realize that God was asking me to make a change, and He was confirming it through other people.
Right.
But it was, I guess you could say it was scary. But is it worse to be scared, or is it worse to be doing a job that you can't do very
Mm,
well? Right?
sure.
I mean, there's different pains.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout it, I just felt like God was leading me
Mm,
and guiding me and asking me to trust Him.
yeah.
So that now my relationships were really key. One of the conclusions I had was I can't stay in this present job the way it's written. The
Mm,
second thing I
right.
concluded is I don't think God's asking me to leave ACC. So that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of a weird.
Sure.
Those two conclusions seem opposite,
Right.
but
Right.
those were some of the things that I started to work with,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so a lot of prayer and getting advice and being honest with
Right.
myself. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think I think it actually takes a lot of leadership to recognize that there are things that you're not gifted at, and there are other people around you who are more gifted, and it takes a leader to actually recognize that the best thing to do as a leader is to actually elevate someone else into leadership, because they have the the skills and the talents and the giftings from God that actually fit what are needed. So I just want to share with you, I think it actually reflects your own leadership. And I think it's very fitting that you're actually that you're going through leadership coaching at the time so that you would actually be able uh, to live that out for yourself. So I just think
Well,
that's an amazing exercise of your own leadership as well.
what's sort of ironic about this is I was spending all this time focusing on who I was and trying to
Hmm.
discern that, but really the decision was because it wasn't about me,
Mm,
right? So
Right.
it seems like it's self-centered, but it's actually I had to have that self-evaluation and honesty before God for the sake of others and
Yeah.
for the
Mm,
sake of the church.
right.
I care about ACC. I have a lot of relationships and friends here. Um, some of you on the screen that might be watching, I've known for many years. I've known you since you were born, which makes me feel really old. But um, I'm very thankful for being here, for the chance to be here. But it wasn't really about me, but it was about me being honest about me,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's an amazing lesson for all of us to take away from is the internal work that we have to do. Some, yes, it's connected to God. It's also about knowing about yourself, but it's about knowing who God is first, what he might be calling us into, and that interplay, right, between knowing yourself and knowing who God is, and kind of that push and pull, that tug of war, so to speak, back and forth is really can be really powerful, right? In actualizing and finding out the sort of life that God is actually calling you into. Because I mean, I can't imagine what it must have been like to go, I've been here for I don't know, I don't at the time was like what 20 some years, right? Or
Mhm.
so. And for you to go like, I think I need to rewrite my job description. I mean, it must have been I can't imagine how the 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 sort of internal struggle you must have sensed
Well, it
you must have
wasn't
been feeling.
overnight. It
Yeah.
wasn't overnight because
Mm.
they don't tell you about this in seminary. So
Yeah.
it's like,
I didn't get that for sure.
yeah. So it was slowly understanding and just trusting God step by step.
Right, right. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I just want to affirm that um I actually don't know if I've ever shared this story in Lighthouse before, but I want to affirm that you are an amazing individual at just figuring out how to care and love on people. And so um when Lynn and I came to interview at ACC, um, uh, what we were actually recipients of your care because uh, we had dinner with a family um, who is at Lighthouse right now. Someone at Lighthouse was there at the dinner table with us, and some of you may know that Lynn actually has a very very severe nut allergy, and this family knew about the nut allergy, but just I think just kind of in the flow of just normal kind of rhythm and cooking and just kind of normal dishes, they served a soup that had slivered almonds in it, a Chinese soup that had slivered almonds in it, and Lynn had taken one spoonful of that soup and she felt it right away, and we had this really awkward I don't know. I don't remember. It was like maybe 30, 45 minutes of like sitting around at the table waiting to take her to the hospital. But the family wanted to take us to the hospital, but we're like, well, there's no point now because we're just waiting, for the allergy to really kick in. So we might as well spend time with you. We still laugh about it to this day. So there's no hard feelings about it. But the part that I want to share with you guys is that I think we were like wrapping up. We were at the end of the we had finished all the interviews for that weekend already, right? And PG dropped everything. I think that Sunday night, and he came to to um to Ascension Hospital up northwest, and he came and he was with us for a couple hours, and he really cared on us and he really loved on us. And I think from Lynn and my perspective, we're like, wow, if this is just what one of the pastors is going to be like to care for us, and we may or may not be here, but just as followers of Christ together, that this is the sort of the leadership and the shepherding that is going on here at this church. Like that was something we got super excited about, and we could feel like really God's blessing and God's working through um uh just you in that moment, Gaylord. So
Mm.
again, I want to thank you. And so I just want to affirm that that caring is definitely a gift of
It
yours.
might have been longer. Weren't you here when we opened Mingdao.
Yeah, I think so.
So you got here
I came in August. I started August 2015. I think that was in, yeah, I think that happened in like February.
at the end of the previous year, maybe. I
No,
don't
I
know.
think it was like February,
Oh,
March-ish.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
You're
it was
right. You're
somewhere
right.
around there. Yeah. Yeah. So almost 7 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, I'm just glad you guys
six
decided to
years ago.
come.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, they're not gonna come.
Right. So, wow. Thanks for sharing more about just
Thanks for the kind
the
words.
change. Thanks for just sharing about the change that you've been going through recently. So, a question that a student asked on Instagram, and they want to know what's your favorite thing about your new position. So, you just started. My understanding, you just started in January, so there's not a lot of experience right now in less than 3 weeks as of tonight's recording. But I'm curious, what part about your role has really invigorated you and breathed new life into you as you've transitioned to this new role here at ACC?
I feel like uh, the greatest joy is knowing that God wired me up a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and the church has allowed me to have a job that um, will leverage it, if you will, the leverage.
Right, right,
So carrying or shepherding is something that um, I'm just wired up to do. I mean, I'm not perfect in it, but when I walk in a room, I read the room, if that makes any sense. I
mm-hmm.
can usually tell pretty quickly how people are doing, who's sad, who's happy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who's nervous.
Yeah,
It's just I don't turn it on. That's just what happens. And God's confirmed it along the way. I've had conversations with people, and they've told me later that that was helpful. And
mm-hmm.
so now to have a job where a large portion of my job um, is saying yes, go use that gift that God has given to you. Because the other way to look at it is, if I don't use the gift God's given to me, then everybody loses. But
Right,
if I do
for sure.
use the gift for God's glory and for other people, then everybody can win.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's really exciting. And one other thing about the job of caring, it's not just the English, it's involving more church wide. So I'll
Mm.
support the Mandarin and the Cantonese.
Right.
I mean, I don't speak Cantonese, but there's plenty of them that speak English. And I've known some of the families for years.
Yeah.
So I can help with caring for Mandarin Cantonese for families. I can come alongside the youth pastor. And if there's
Thanks.
things to, just to, obviously Pastor Pat is the family next gen family pastor, but
Mm-hmm.
we're all a team here. We have a
Yeah.
great team, and so to fill in the cracks, to fill in the gaps that we might have,
Right.
that's exciting to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
fun, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just the way God's wired me, and so that I think the potential to use that for His glory and hopefully bring others along with
Right.
me
Right.
is very exciting.
Mm. Well, thanks so much for sharing about how you feel like the way God has wired you and designed you can really be used to honor him and to bless his people. I'm so excited for your new start. Uh, Another question I'm really curious about, PG, is what did you learn about God and the life of the Christian journey that you feel like would really apply to a middle schooler, would really apply to a high schooler right now? Right? Because you've got this story, you're working, but maybe it doesn't feel like, if I'm a middle schooler, it doesn't connect to me right now. But what do you feel like is something that maybe some of our students could really learn about what does it mean to journey as a Christian?
Well, I think learning that God can be trusted, especially when I am anxious or even afraid about things.
Mm,
So in this
mm,
case, I was like,
right.
I could sense that something wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
that things were not clicking. And I could tell that people were getting frustrated, but people were very kind. They wouldn't say anything, but I could
Mm-hmm.
tell because I read people. And so I think God. trusting God enough and to be assured that I didn't have to worry about what other people thought about me. In
Mm-hmm.
that, in other words, the scripture says the truth will set you free. So as I
Right.
leaned into the truth of who I was,
Mm-hmm.
who I am, and tried to live in the reality of that, sure, along the way that would probably involve saying I'm not very good at this, or I failed at this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay, right?
Right.
Because I think what's worse is to pretend that everything's okay when it's not.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
If I'm more afraid of what people think than what God's will is, then that's when I'm really going to be afraid, and that's when I'm going to really be in pain, and
Oh
that's
wow.
when
Yeah.
others
Yeah.
will be hurt too.
Mm-hmm.
So it, I've learned that if I can trust God during those times and not worry what other people think, then there's actually peace. There's actually joy,
Mm-hmm.
and God actually is bigger because it's like, wow, God, you're really wise. It took me a
Right.
while to get back on the same page with you. I mean, I wasn't running away from him. I wasn't in,
Mm-hmm.
in sinful behavior. It was just that I needed to walk through that journey to learn about myself, and it had to go through that pain or that discomfort, but it was
Right.
worth it. So,
Right.
but God is trustworthy, and I don't have to worry what other people think.
Yeah, I mean, those are some really important, I think, truths to for middle school and high school students to hold on to, right? Because you could be looking at what your friends are going through. Maybe your parents have certain expectations. Maybe your friends' parents have other expectations, and your parents are comparing you to them, and all that sort of thing. But to really lean into what God's word is saying, first of all, and then trusting that God's plans are good for you and to know that what he has for you is requires you to trust God in a way that maybe means not following what everyone else is doing, right? And so I think that's a really powerful and important lesson for us to
Well,
really hold on
what
to.
well, I think Dom, you know this too. We've had conversations. It's just um, to be a pastor, you can't you can't be a pastor and try to please people
Yeah.
because like the same message or the same decision you make, there's going to be some people who are happy and some people who aren't,
Hmm.
and that's okay as long as you do it graciously and as long as you know that's what God wanted you to do. But
Yeah.
if any of us try to be pastors or any of us try to be anybody as a Christ follower, if you live to please people, you're always going to disappoint someone, and
For
you're
sure.
always going to be stressed out and really just depressed about it because you'll
Yeah, I
always
mean, you're
fail.
gonna be neurotic, fearing
Yeah.
that you're just
Yes.
gonna upset someone,
Yeah.
and you'll never know who that person actually is.
Right. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
when you are by yourself in the darkness, when it's time to sleep or whatever, you know who you are,
yeah,
and you're trying to be someone that you're not,
yeah, for sure.
and that's
Hmm.
just a really sad way to live.
Definitely. But thanks for sharing that truth with us. I think that's really important for us to hold on to and to know that we need to know who God has made us to be, and we need to know who God has, what the sort of life that God has called us into. And that's the most important thing that we can actually do right now, today, more than anything else. Well, thank you, Pastor Gaylord, so much for just sharing the things that you've been learning and and sharing with us the things that God has been teaching you over the past couple years, and to see that fruit actually being realized right now is really exciting. And I'm really excited for what God has for you this year and for the years to come, as well as you transition and take on this new role as the, I guess, the ACC caring pastor, really, right?
Well, my official title is English and Caring Pastor. So
There you go. All right. So kind of doing a little bit of both. So we're really excited for you and for the upcoming changes. So we're going to transition to a time of just a couple fun questions to ask Pastor Gaylord. Some of you asked these on Instagram, so we'll get right to it. So we've got a softball one here for you, and the first is, what's your favorite book of the Bible and why? What's your favorite book of the Bible?
It's the book of Philippians because we're told to rejoice.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that as not only rejoicing, but laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that knows me, I like to
I'm
laugh.
I'm gonna give you.
Um,
I'm gonna start with a one right now.
oh, okay.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, you can explain that.
Yeah.
Uh, I I do tell really dumb jokes sometimes, but I do that because if it makes people laugh, or if they don't if they realize I'm not taking myself seriously, then hopefully they feel more comfortable. And if everybody laughs, then I win. Even if
Right.
they groan and they laugh, then I win. So
Or roll our eyes.
Philippians, huh?
Or roll
Yeah,
our eyes.
yes, right. If there is a reaction, I win. So um, Philippians is a book about rejoicing, even in no matter what our circumstances, and I try to live that way. So
Nice. Awesome. That's a great book of the Bible. And the other question that I really am curious to know about is, what is one of the most important lessons that you've learned in your life? So
okay,
kind of got philosophical here, but what's
yeah,
one of the most important lessons that you've learned in your life?
um, especially in light of what I shared earlier about this journey of since 2017, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also just from my own journey as a parent, as a husband. I could summarize it by saying only a fool is unteachable.
Mm. Wow.
Only a fool is
Wow.
unteachable.
Mm-hmm.
If I get so proud or so arrogant, so um, confident, so to speak, that
Right.
I choose not to learn,
Mm-hmm.
um, then I'm a fool.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
and I think it really became apparent when with parenting. My two kids are very different. I've definitely made mistakes. I wish I could take back, um, but I realized that if I allowed God or my wife Tina or something I read or a seminar or watching a friend's someone else's example, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to say, you know what I'm doing is wrong or what I'm doing is not helpful, and let me try this. God, will you help me to do this more? Sometimes it's really a matter of saying less than saying more. But
Mm.
if I am not teachable, I don't care how old I am,
Right.
how
Wow.
old I'll be. I need to always be teachable.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm a fool.
Yeah. I mean, that's really a lesson for all of us, right? Because I mean, we're all learning different things at different stages. I know I'm learning new things all the time, and I'm trying to overcome hurdles and in my own life as well that I may not be recognizing and am confused. Why am I experiencing these hurdles that I don't understand how they seem to have just popped up out of nowhere like weeds. But that's an amazing truth that I think really extends to any someone of any age really, that that we really need to uh, have the attitude of being teachable under all circumstances and allowing other people to teach us, allowing God to teach us, allowing God's word to teach us. So that's an amazing truth and an amazing lesson that you're sharing with us. So thanks so much for sharing that, PG. So with that
Welcome.
being said, that really wraps up and concludes our time here to just hear the things that are been going on in Pastor Gaylord's life and for him to share these truths with us. So again, I want to thank Pastor Gaylord for his time to really share just how God has been using him recently. And hopefully you've gleaned something from his life and his story. And then maybe you might be going through similar things in your own life as well. So I want you to be encouraged that, even as adults, there are things that we face that we don't really have the answers to. So life isn't all figured out all the time. That's okay. And we know that at your age too, that you don't have things all figured out, and that's okay too. But what we do know most of all is who God is, and we can rely and lean on God's character and the rock of that is everything that God is about, and we can lean in on Him. And as we do that, we actually learn more about ourselves when we trust and lean on God more than anything else. So I hope you have taken away a lot from Pastor Gaylord's story tonight.
Hey, Dom, and also if any of the youth, want to get in touch,
Sure.
they can go to the website and get my email.
course.
or whatever,
Yeah.
I would love to keep in touch, trying to learn how
Yeah,
to be a
for
caring
sure.
pastor. So
Yeah, so his caring extends to you guys as well. All right. So just want to let you guys know that. So again, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you guys later. Take care, Lighthouse. Bye. I want to apologize that I actually did not remember the story about our interview weekend correctly. It was actually at the beginning of the interview weekend. So the whole weekend we were interviewing, meeting many of you, and trying to juggle Lynn's health while still being available the whole weekend. She did an amazing job, and I'm so appreciative of all the big and small, seen and unseen ways that Lynn serves us. In light of my conversation with Pastor Gaylord, here are 3 sets of questions I'd like for you to discuss with your small group. First, identify a change that you are experiencing in your own life, and hopefully that's non-academic related. What is an actionable step you can take in your life to address the change that you are facing? Second, what is one thing that you learned from Pastor Gaylord's experience and story that you can apply to your own life? And thirdly, Pastor Gaylord shared how he sensed that there is something in his life that isn't going right. When you sense something in your own life isn't going right, what do you tend to do and who do you tend to talk with? I want you to reflect on that, and I want you to evaluate how gospel centered are the inputs in your life when things aren't going well, and how can you possibly even grow in this area as well. Since the impact of the pandemic hit us last spring, we haven't had a baptism for a long time. Baptism is simply a public proclamation of a Christian's faith. We are currently planning on a baptism in mid to late April. Obviously, we will hold the baptism in a safe and socially distanced manner, and we'll hold 4 baptism classes over Zoom to help prepare and equip you for your baptism. If you're interested in getting baptized or have questions about baptism, please email me and I'd love to help you. The deadline to let me know is February 14th. Like I shared last week, there are some exciting things we're really close to announcing for you, so stay tuned to our Instagram and our YouTube pages. I hope and pray that you found today's conversation a look at how your pastors are dealing with changes and challenges in our lives, and how Pastor Gaylord leaned on God, His Word, and other believers to direct him to live more in God's will for his life now than he was doing before. We're praying that you have a great time connecting with one another as you learn from Pastor Gaylord's life and experiences. We'll see you in the next video.